Welcome to this edition of the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation podcast. My name is Ofovwe Aig-Imoukhuede, and I will be your host for this session. There's a well-established idea in development circles that policies don't usually fail because they're badly designed. They fail because implementation capacity is weak. But even that explanation feels incomplete. It assumes that capacity exists and is simply underperforming. But that may not be the real issue. The reality is that execution doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's shaped by systems, by training, experience, and how public servants are prepared for the work they're expected to do. So maybe the question we should be looking to answer is not why reforms fail at execution, but why execution capacity is so uneven in the first place. And that changes everything, because now we're not just talking about weak implementation, we're talking about something deeper: system readiness. In Nigeria, for instance, we've seen reforms where the policy logic is strong, but outcomes vary widely across ministries. In one ministry, a reform moves, in another, the same reform stalls. Same policy, different results. So what's happening beneath the surface? Public servants are being asked to deliver reform at a level that assumes certain skills, judgment, and technical know-how already exist. But do they really? That's the question sitting underneath everything we'll explore today. Because once you recognize this issue, reform is no longer just about policy design or political will. It becomes a question of capability, very practical capability. To explore this, I'm joined by Mrs Funke Adepoju of the Administrative Staff College of Nigeria, ASCON. ASCON is Nigeria's central government training institution for public servants. It was established in 1973 to strengthen the capacity of the civil service and improve how government institutions function. In practical terms, it sits at the intersection of training, policy implementation, and institutional reform. Mrs Funke Adepoju was appointed Director General of ASCON in 2025, and she's leading an ambitious transformation to reposition the college as Nigeria's National School of Government. A governance strategist and reform leader, she's driving institutional change that strengthens systems, raises standards, and delivers tangible impact across the public sector. And I'm also pleased to say that she's our 2025-2026 AIG Fellow. So given Mrs. Adepoju's vantage point, there are few people better placed to unpack these questions. I am very pleased to welcome her to this conversation today. Mrs. Adepoju, thank you very much for joining us. Okay, let's get straight into it. Let's start from a familiar assumption that implementation fails because capacity is weak. But in Nigeria's context, that feels too broad, because when we say weak capacity, we treat it as a single issue. In reality, it's not. So you might have officers who can draft strong policy memos but struggle to negotiate across agencies, or teams that understand reform goals but really don't know how to translate them into implementation sequences. So my very first question to you, Mrs. Adepoju, is this: is the issue really weak capacity, or are we just not clear on what kind of capacity reform actually needs?
Wow, thank you very much, Ofovwe. And that's been a very robust introduction. But I'm going to start in a way that shows that that question actually reframes the whole conversation. So let me start by saying that reform outcomes in Nigeria depend less on policy quality. And the question that we are faced with is that whether the system is precise about the capability it demands. Is it deliberate in how it builds it? And is it disciplined in how it sustains it? And that takes me to saying for too long, weak capacity has actually functioned as a catch-all diagnosis. We're very easy to put it on weak capacity when reform conversations come up. But the truth is that in practice, the word weak capacity actually obscures more than it reveals. And when we say capacity is weak, we tend to mean only one of three different things. And most often than not, we do not separate them. And so our response miss. So I'd quickly like to take this opportunity to break weak capacity into three areas, which we often assess as just one. And I believe that identifying them is a step towards providing an answer to the question that you have asked. And so the first one for me is weak capacity. Is the capacity technical? And that is, can that officer interpret what it needs to achieve the role we expect them to play? For instance, maybe you need to interpret financial regulation, or you need to build a procurement specification. Does that technical capacity exist? So when we say weak capacity, are we referring to a technical capacity? The second one, I want us to see it as adaptive capacity. And you mentioned it while you were speaking. Does that officer has the requisite capacity to even engage in negotiations across institutional boundaries, read the political dynamics, which more often than not, we need to identify and recognize. And the third one for me is the system's capacity. That's whether the environment around the officer actually supports the application of what they know. And let me give you an example from ASCON and from my current vantage point at the Blavatnik School of Government. Is that for us in Nigeria, we often train for the first, we assume secondly, and we neglect the third. And that's why you see the pattern that you described in your introduction, the same policy succeeding in one MDA and stalling in another. And what does that tell us? The policy is constant, the capability ecosystem around is not. So the honest answer for me to the question that you have asked is that the issue is not capacity that is uniformly weak. It is that we rarely are precise about what kind of specific reform we're actually demanding, and therefore making it difficult to diagnose which part of that capability stack is missing. And another concrete example is that when government rolls out, let's take the e-government agenda for example. It requires developers, yes, but it also requires other officers like procurement, like those who understand the digital procurement, legal officers that can draft service level agreements, and so on and so forth. So when technical skills are present, but the adjacent skills are not, delivery is slowed. And that is not weak capacity. It is more of a problem of capability mismatch. And so this has led us to wanting to work on a framework that I developed during my Oxford Fellowship, which I call the RISE model. The R stands for reform, which is the North Star. I is inspired public service identity. The S is systems-based simulation learning. And the E is execution, which is the measurable outcome. And the reason I've built those four pillars is precisely because reform in Nigeria has often collapsed into generic training. And what RISE insists here is that before you deliver a single day of training, we must be able to answer the question, capacity for what are we trying to build? At the level of that specific reform, it must have a specific role and the specific institutional environment. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. I like how you really just unpacked everything for novices who don't understand what the actual needs are. So brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ofovwe. I appreciate
Summarizing
you.
it very well. Yeah, that's why you are in the position you're in.
That's why you're giving me more work to do, and I'm happy to do it.
And I'm really glad that your time at the Polytechnic School has helped you, because it clearly has enabled you to properly articulate what the issues are and to develop a framework for trying to close them. So this RISE model sounds very, very interesting. Can you walk us through how you plan to implement the RISE model? Because Nigeria is huge and we have many, many public servants. So it is one thing to develop this framework, but another thing to properly implement it and to scale it. So walk us through what you're going to do differently and how ASCON is going to approach the issue of public service training differently. Thank you.
Okay. Let me quickly mention that what we're trying to do with RISE, we have also taken onto the African continent. And I'll also be presenting the RISE model at the Conference of Management Development Institutes in Africa. Why? Because the problem is that it affects all of us. So I'll just give you just a skeletal brief about what RISE is talking about before we continue. So basically, RISE, like I said, it's reform-inspired systems execution. And what RISE is addressing is that capacity building is currently disconnected from service delivery. So we spend billions on training to improve individual knowledge, but honestly, it lacks post-classroom accountability. That's where execution comes in. And the reality for RISE is that there are lack of execution mechanisms. So you have the investment on the one hand, we don't have execution mechanisms, and then there's question mark on citizen impact, because they are the end beneficiary, they are the ultimate beneficiary of the reforms that we're trying to carry out. So the reality is that there's no system to track if training leads to reform. So leaders are left asking what actually changed. And that's why most organizations, especially at the subnational, see training as an expenditure instead of an investment in its workforce. So my proposal with RISE is that we need to begin to see how best we can convert training into verifiable system for execution. We have assumptions which I will discuss much explicitly during the lecture. And those assumptions are that once the training takes place in the classroom, honestly, there's a transfer illusion embedded in that system. We assume that what they have learned is going to work at their places of work. But we're saying the need to begin to hardwire the system to ensure that training flows directly into action would require a RISE model that focuses on reform priorities, institutional routines, and digital performance tracking. Otherwise, we're just doing the same thing in different ways. So this RISE, which we call RISE, are four mutually reinforcing pillars, and the ultimate aim is that they must drive execution. And the takeaway there is that training is the entry point, is not the end point. And I'll just give you a very simple example also. RISE for me is something that we need to adapt quickly as an execution protocol. So in the course of my research, we were able to identify that the current training methodologies that we have across most of our institutions, using even ASCON as a pilot case, is that Ofovwe, it is attendance based, how many people came. It is certificate focused, how many people are certified. The skills that we bandy around is usually generic skills, and we have no follow-up, and we end up with private reports. And it's a routine that has not delivered the quality we want to see in citizens' impact. And don't forget that part of the presidential priorities put the citizen engagement at the center of it all. They're the ultimate beneficiary. So the RISE approach is focusing on, instead of attendance-based, let's focus on execution. Let's have micro projects that can speak to what we're doing at our various MDAs, and then we can measure the improvements that the system has gained over time. Instead of just certificate, we can focus on evidence packs. Like I said, generic skills, no. Reform micro projects that can leave our people with lasting knowledge and impact in the system. Don't also forget that it is adult learning. So we can't continue to treat training like teaching or lecturing. And then no follow-up. I've had over 200,000 beneficiaries of ASCON training in the last 30 years, not even taking it to the 52 years of ASCON's existence. I am just deploying an alumni app. So how then do we even track what the benefits of these trainings have been on the system? And interestingly, we're going to end this with a reform dashboard. You can see it, we don't have to say. So we're designing it to be able to measure results from day one. Officers complete reform micro projects. Indonesia has done it, and they have over 200 innovation projects in the kitty. So let's look at officers completing reform micro projects in training. We're able to reduce processing time for administrative processes. We're able to measure budget utilization rates to up to 92%. And then Savicom, which is the federal government's program to measure service delivery, we're able to also monitor compliant resolution speed and set a target, and then have an on-time reporting compliance. All these things are achievable. So we're looking at a system of training through the RISE framework that would assist us deliver tangible and tracked outcomes. The dashboard will be an accountability backbone. You don't need to believe us. You can see it. You can monitor it. So we're coming up with an ASCON pilot anchor project, and that we're going to start with the program that we want to do for the heads of federal government agencies and parastatals, which is called the mandatory training program, the high level. And the theme is going to be leadership for policy execution and performance management. So we want to see reform diagnostics, we want to see mandatory workplace reform projects, and we are able to monitor. And this would be an ASCON anchored pilot that will drive real-world implementation with a built-in mechanism for continuous improvement, because that's where we are headed. And the tangible assets we can easily monitor. We want to see documented post-training reforms. We want to see measurable service improvements. We want to see standardized execution tools developed. We want to see a national reform tracking model. And honestly, credible evidence, which is the data that we require for national scale-up. So basically, it's a transformation journey that would move the training institutes such as ours from just being a training provider to a functional foundation for Nigeria's National School of Government. And that's why we have moved for an expanded mandate for Administrative Staff College of Nigeria to a school of government that's beyond just being a training institute to being where government gets its workforce that lays the foundation for improved service delivery to the people. A public sector training center that will most probably lead to reform. It's not a concept, it's an execution protocol. Thank you.
My gosh. Very, very ambitious. Very, very ambitious. I love the micro projects. Yes, because it's moving from theory to practice.
Yes, exactly.
And you're creating opportunity for the citizen impact that is at the center
very
of
key.
everything that government is supposed to do. I'm very excited.
Sorry, I want to quickly add something.
Yes.
You know why the citizen impact is very important in the national priorities? I'll give you a very simple case study. If you look at the Nigeria those who give us passports, the Nigerian Immigration Service. There were times in this country that you would have queues in front of passport office and you'd be wondering, is this a train to heaven? But the systems were changed, the training systems were changed, automation came into the system, and today, record time, you have passports ready before you say Jack Robinson. And I recall that the Minister of Interior, at the last passing out of the MPP that we were in Abuja, said they cleared over 286,000 passports in less than a month. So that's an improvement in the process, and it's fixed to execution. You don't have multiple points to stop when you're traveling. Check your passport A, check it B, check it C, check it D. So these are processes that execution has actually impacted upon. And we think that if we key this into training models, then we move away from just theory to practical things that the citizens can speak to. And of course, it's a badge for the administration of improved service delivery.
Yes, it's that example really shows how quickly change can happen. And as you said, how citizens' lives can be improved.
That's the whole idea.
When the system
work. Yes.
Yes. And the system working is not just capacity, it's not just digitalization, it's a combination of all of those things.
Yes, it's a people thing, and their understanding of roles and responsibilities, and whether the environment also supports that. You take somebody on a training on digitalization, and you get to the office, there are no systems, so about 11 people are hanging on to one system. It's not gonna happen. So they must all go together. I could do this forever. So let's get back.
that actually brings me directly to my next question. Because so when you're talking about something technical, we talked about digitalization. Let's talk about like public financial management reforms, so like budget reforms, expenditure controls, all of these are very technical. But as you have said, in practice, they require coordination, behavioral change, systems change, resources, managing resistance, and all of this. So the question that I want to ask you, for you as a trainer, developer of people, so how do we assess whether public sector leaders actually have that mix of technical and behavioral capability to deliver reforms, to look upon a problem like the Minister of Interior did, and to say, okay, these are the things that we need to do to actually achieve these reforms? So how do you assess the public sector leaders?
Let us start here, and this is why this conversation gets really practical, and I'll answer it as directly as I can. We're talking about assessing the right mix of technical and behavioral skills. The Nigeria Public Service historically assess readiness through proxies. And you know what those proxies are? Who is the most senior? What's the qualification on paper?
Oh dear.
How many required courses have you taken? And that's what we take. Tell us who has sat in what chair and for how long. Oh, you've been a director here in the last 6 years. Okay, so you are qualified. The system does not tell us whether, as a permanent secretary, for example, sitting in front of a TSA implementation team can actually lead that team through the behavioral change that reform requires. I've had cause to ask questions in the system, and honestly, I would not follow the answers because I'll be going right into the ditch until I read up myself. But the person sitting on the seat, if you ask me, should not be on that seat. But he's a deputy director. What do you do? So what we've been trying to do to address this kind of problem is to say that at ASCON, I'm trying to see if we would get support to begin to build a kind of dual lens architecture. And when I say dual lens assessment, is what you are saying here, a technical and a behavioral. On the technical side, there's need for us to begin to look at the substance of the reform. Does the officer understand what to do? Be it regulatory, be it financial, be it data flows, be it compliance. So the only way that we can assess that right mix is to have a kind of structured diagnostics, case-based testing, scenario analysis. It's not so complicated, it's just that we don't do it. But on the behavioral side, and this is actually where reforms live or die, we need to also shift focus to a few basic things. And that assessment should focus on ability. First, do you have the ability to negotiate across institutional boundaries? Do you have the ability to hold position under pressure? Can you even communicate reform intent to people who are likely to resist it? I experienced this a lot. When I got to ASCON, I said a lot of things must change. First, please, I want to go digital. Registration must be digital. If you pack your bags and you get to the entrance of Harvard without pre-registration, even if you have paid, your receipt will not get you in. You would have registered even before you get to the point of payment. So how do you know who is coming? Why shouldn't we plan for who is coming? So they still would come back to me and say, DGMA, we're actually thinking that maybe we should do it in 2027. And I say, why not now? How do you know if they have the ability to sequence decisions even when resources are constrained? These abilities, they are not soft skills. They're just those competencies that must determine whether a well-designed reform actually moves. If you take the Nigeria's TSA, for example, technical skills are required, but we also need the behavioral skills in managing the loss of autonomy conversation with CEOs that are used to historically controlling their own bank account, what goes in, what comes out. So what we're just trying to do, or that we're going to try and do, to make sure that we have both the technical assessment and the behavioral assessment on the same pedestal but separately, and see how we can put them together, is that we are making effort, even though it sounds ambitious, that we can do a kind of 360 degrees reform readiness assessment, a diagnostic that can combine what do we want to see if we're looking for technical skill, what do we want to see if we're looking for behavioral observation, what do we want to see that before we assign this officer to a reform critical role, do we know specifically on evidence that they can hold the technical, adaptive and behavioral load the reform will place on them. You get to an hospital or a government health center and you find somebody on the front desk who is still telling you that they want to look for your card. I don't know if you have that experience. They want to look for the card that you have used to register. And
a long time ago.
And the next 1 hour, they say, wait, we're coming. Is it too long? And then if you now put that to an hospital that is automated, where you just go in, and then once you mention your name or whatever, they punch it in, and everything is out. You get to the front of the doctor, and everything is done on the laptop. Your result is immediately going to the pharmacy. So some of these things, there must be a balance, and we must know exactly who is properly equipped to function on those roles. So the reason and why this matters is also very simple. How do you then hold somebody accountable for the reform delivery that you have not equipped or assessed them for?
That is really deep. That is the question, yes, because
that's the question I'm going to use to answer your question.
You can't point fingers at people and say you're not performing when you haven't provided them with the resources they need.
Okay, so we train them on AI and there's no computer. There's nothing they're going to work with.
Then what is the point?
What is the point? And then somebody sends me on training because I like Chioma's face. There's a Chioma used to greet me very well. We will not take Ofovwe, we will not take Sheyi, we will not take anybody. Chioma is you. So all those things will continue to happen as long as we don't have those kind of assessments that can easily give us a better understanding of who needs what and how do we get to that person and how does that person deliver that role.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're very right. And there's actually a very useful framing from the United Nations Development Program, which describes capacity development as a continuous cycle. So needs assessment based on, what is required, then design, application, evaluation, and then adaptation. Because without all of these things, you will end up, as you said, just sending someone off for AI training without understanding really, do they have the resources?
Right.
Is the system even ready for AI implementation? So what you're doing is you're wasting your resources.
And time. And the system suffers for it.
Yes. So, the issue, I think, is that you're going to have to change people's perspectives and understanding of what training really is about, what it's supposed to do. It's not a benefit, it's a driver of reform.
Yes,
and
it's a lever.
And that is something that we as Nigerian and I guess in the African public sector space don't understand. And so when we say we're training, are we actually building capacity? Are we just breaking the cycle that produces it? And it's very interesting because obviously, that there's a lot of ongoing work in the federal civil service around reform. Yes. And right now, they're actually going through a needs assessment, a capacity needs assessment, which is very, very exciting because it is doing the two things that you talked about, both the technical needs assessment and also the Yes. And so I think that would be great for ASCON because you will basically have an overview of what the needs for the Nigerian civil service actually are, and then you can develop solutions to meet those needs. So how do you plan? Yes, how do you plan to use all of this?
Oh, I love this conversation. This particular question cuts very close to the bone, Ofovwe. But for much of our history, we've been interrupting the cycle more often than we have been completing it. I'll tell you that. Not that I'm criticizing as, just one single action, but it's a structural observation of how capacity development has been organized in this part of the climb. The most overused word is capacity development. I don't know if you experience it. So consider the cycle that UNDP describes: needs assessment, design, application, evaluation, and adaptation. It's a continuous loop, no doubt, but in practice, it has functioned as what I'll call a series of disconnected events. I'm on the Once Knowledge Committee, so I understand where you're coming from when you mention the federal government's initiative through the Office of the Head of Service on needs assessment. But most of the time, these needs assessments are often done in isolation from actual reform demands at the point that we're carrying them out. And honestly, it ends up to meet individual needs, not the organizational needs. I don't know if you think of it like that.
Yes.
I did one in my organization about 3 weeks ago. Dudu, Ralph, and we saw everything they needed. It's in complete disconnection from the mandate of the institution. The skills that they need, the needs assessment that we're getting out of them speaks to their individual needs. So, design then is the design is driven by donor timelines rather than institutional readiness. You bring go back in history. This is what we are taking you between this time and this time, and that's it. Whether you now don't use it over the next 5 years, they have checked their own boxes. It's been done. Have we at any point in time been able to marry the institutional needs or readiness with what the organization needs? They give me an establishment approval to employ, and you're telling me to employ maybe, for example, 40 entry-level officers. and yet I have a deficit mid-level of, let's say, about 33 officers. The civil service does not allow you to migrate them from, in fact, how can they even pass when the person that is 1 day senior will show you that he is your senior? So
Wow.
the deficit remains where it remains, and we're busy engaging people at that lower level because it is more of patronage. Is it what the organization needs?
That's very deep.
Yeah. So let me now, close that to say that, each of those breaks, they are breaks, they are not gaps. It interrupts the cycle at the point that we should actually be saying, oh, you have learned so much, and it's meant to now compound into your capability to deliver the role that you have. I said this before, and it applies to what we're discussing now. A ministry sends 40 officers on a 5-day training on digital service delivery. We have a training that is well designed. The officers learn, they come to classroom, they go back to their offices. The system they are supposed to apply the learning to, my EVC, is either they do not exist or are not fully deployed. How do we reform? Or usually would require authorizations that they do not have. 6 months later, you want to do evaluation. Honestly, the knowledge is long gone. I can't even remember how to open this system.
Lost, yes, because they didn't apply it. There was no way for them to apply it.
I don't want to use the knowledge as decayed. It's long gone. The behaviors have reverted.
Yes.
There's been no outlet. So how can we say the reform is closer to delivery? At no point are we able to conduct evaluation. No means. I have officers in my organization that have not been trained in the last 22 years. So what would you expect?
Yeah.
And because it has not surfaced, the next training cohort is just sent into the same broken pipeline. It's your turn to go. Oh my goodness. And this is what I mean by saying, it's a continuous interruption of the cycle. We're not short on training. We're short on training that is embedded in a live application environment and looped through structured evaluation. Please keep that sentence for me somewhere. Just keep it somewhere. Training that is embedded in live application. If I get to ASCON and it is only 52 years later that I'm saying certificates must be electronic, and I have a director telling me that it will be very difficult, I didn't get that. And I said, in 2026, what's going to be difficult? That people don't have emails? It's mandatory that you have an official email. And then we spend money on certificates that can be forged. So I'm launching that next week, and we have a verification process for it. I think it's a good place to clap for me.
Look, I don't even know where to start, because as you're describing this, I just the problem just seems so huge.
Yes, what I'm trying to communicate to us is that we have a big project in our hand for what we're doing as AIG Foundation, for what we're doing as me sitting on the hot seat now in ASCON as the Management Training Institute for the country, is that we have to look beneath the training, or let me say beyond the training, and embrace a system like RISE that holds you accountable and holds also the institutions accountable by not just churning out people who come for course and check the papers, but that would actually carry home the reform that we want to see in our system. So the example that I'll use to wrap this up is sending officers on a 5-day digital service training. They come back and there's nothing to work with. 6 months later, the knowledge is gone. So at no point has evaluation was conducted. So I say we keep interrupting the cycle, and we're not short on training, but we're short on training that is embedded in live application environment. And that's something that we need to work towards within our system, so that what you're doing, what we are doing, collaborations that we must quickly engage in to ensure that we're all working in the same direction, so that the private sector is equally on. So what we propose is that after every major program, that we have a mandatory post-training review. And another thing that is possible is to say that for every curriculum revision cycle, it must be anchored on what we learn from the review data, not just from assumption, not just from recycling it because that's the way it must be. But the honest answer is that capacity does not build through single events. We agree to that it's a continuous thing. But we need to ensure that we have completed cycles, repeated over and over, repeating what works. The moment we continue to treat training as an end point rather than a waypoint, we stop building capacity and start performing it. And we cannot afford that in Nigeria. To improve the service that we deliver, we have to really build the capacity deliberately and honestly. And that's what I would say to that. Not leaving
so
it midway. Not dropping
so
it midway. You come to class, it's ended and you're gone. No.
Yes. So many gems. So we treat training as an end point instead of a waypoint.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's very, very key because
yes, it's not a checkpoint either.
Yes,
it's the beginning.
Yes. So, I mean, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But something that is key in what you just said is the system. Because when you talk about training being embedded in live application environments, you need to consider what those environments are, what those systems are, and whether or not the people that you're training have the capability to navigate those systems. So, we have a real life example in, let's take a major reform that everybody knows about, which is the Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System. That's IPPIS. So basically it's payroll, straightforward reform. You centralize payroll, you eliminate ghost workers, improve transparency and all of that. But in practice, it touches on identity, power, trust, and deeply embedded habits. So if you're reforming a system like that, first of all, let's look at the technical side of it. Yes, so you have to consider, do people have the technical capability to design, manage, and maintain that sort of personnel data at that scale? And that is one thing. But the second and most important thing, which I think we have sort of glossed over a little bit in our conversation, and I really want us to do a deep dive in, is do people have an understanding of how fragmented the underlying systems actually are? Do they understand the political environments in which they're operating? How do you teach them how to navigate those environments where there's resistance to change? Yes. How do you do that?
Okay. I think that generally we always stop sensitization and capacity building for some of these things, especially the techie ones. We take the deployment as where to be and as an achievement once it is deployed. But just like I said, training is not an end point. Deployment also is the beginning. It's not the end. And I think that's where we lose it. And it's where we have had the weakest link. Sustaining. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board and begin to continuously engage the users of this system on the key skills that determines the sustainability of a system like the IPs. And the first one is continuous data stewardship. If you take a personnel-based database, new records don't stop. We stop old records being updated. And because of that, integration with adjacent systems get funny. IPs is linked to pensions, health insurance, nominal role, management, etc. And somehow, we just stop updating those records, funnily enough. So for me, I would say that every MDA in government needs to have some set of permanent trained data steward cadre. They can call it any name, but we know that the professional or technical expertise would reside in those people, and their job is not to build the system but to keep it honest, open, everyday update. And it's a very undervalued skill. It's not like having data, we call them data entry officers, almost undervalued. but we need to scale it up so that they can form that continuous data stewardship track in the system. Another one that I think we should also focus on is the analytical oversight of that system. Because if you take IPs, for example, it generates enormous volume of data outside of payroll. The third is integration management. Before I go to the integration management, you will see here that at the second one, which I said the analytical oversight, it requires specific analytical literacy. And no, I'm sure people are not trained in it. Otherwise, how do you explain 6 years you have overstayed and the system is now asking them to repay that money? How nice wouldn't it have been if the system had automatically shut them out? Who is following up? 21 officers. I look at integration management also. The system does not have to exist in isolation. And it should connect our financial management information, it should connect our pension administration, it should go with the national identity number, the NIMSI number, with tax administration. At each of these integration points is a potential point of failure. And the point of failure is just like I gave you a typical example of what's happened in ASCON. It's a potential failure point if not integrated. So how do we sustain the system that requires officers that understands integration architecture, that can diagnose where a breakdown is happening, and who can coordinate these fixes across multiple institutional owners? It's a specialist work. It cannot be done by an admin officer that you go and put on your own eyepiece. Come on. And another one that comes to my head to round that up.
So if you look at, so IPIS was just one example, and there's so many more that
Believe
we could
me, it's enough
identify.
headache. And we're a beneficiary of that potential point of failure because the system is either not manned by specialists or there's inadequate integration management. So who sees it on the dashboard? Does the dashboard even blink against a name that is one day over? Who is trained to know it, even at the back end? So I think you should be okay with 3.
Yes.
I'm going to pack my bag.
That really highlighted the deficiencies that exist. But I really want to us to talk about the system and change management. Because reform requires not just the policy, not just the people, but it requires a transformation of the way things are done. Right. And yes, you can train somebody on paper and you can put in place new processes and so forth. But how do you move from what is to what should be? That requires a lot of change management. Yes. It's culture. It requires a cultural shift. And reformers usually face great challenges when it comes to moving people from where they are to where they need to be. So change management is a very big driver of successful reforms. As a trainer, how can we embed change management in how we train public servants? It's almost as if right now we act as if it's something that should happen naturally, but we know that it requires intentional steps to successfully transform an organization. So how would you go about embedding change management in how we train public servants?
Embedding change management in how we train public servants, it's a big question. But it has a very simple answer. You know that when I resumed in ASCON, I think about a week after, I told them to organize a change and strategic management 3-day retreat. The first thing people want to understand is a reason to change. Why do you want them to change? And the same thing we're applying through the RISE program. We're saying that, let me use ASCON. ASCON is not a university. It's a management development institute. I met a system that trains people like they're in the university. You will write your lecture notes. They will prepare slides for you. Old-fashioned, they will photocopy it. Used time and time over. But we needed to make a crossover. It's an adult learning, so things must change. So when you're telling people about change management in the public sector, we're referring to structured approach. So I told them that I've come with a transformational agenda. That agenda will first of all transition you as individuals, and then as an institution, and then as a system, to how we do it, which I call the current state, to a desired future state. It's just very simple. Change. You can look at the grammatical meaning. And that change will not be in isolation. We want it to be in response to reforms in policies and our modernization effort. And in that process, I also came up with a state ASCON compact. And that means we have to co-create programs for the needs of the states. So it cannot be your photocopied PowerPoint presentation. It has to be context specific. We must be seen as a solution track, solution provider. Let them come with that problem. I'm not going to train Ebonyi State civil servants using Lagos State example. We can benchmark. So you will see that we're trying to bring in some form of real life situations. And the key areas of change that I see in training is that we have to be looking at maybe policy and institutional reforms. How do they understand the implementation of their mantras? If you take Lagos State, for example, their mantra is themes plus. Their area of focus, transport, housing, environment, transportation and whatever. So if we don't come up with initiatives to rethink how we build capacity, it will be a road to nowhere. Imagine that ASCON was established in 1973. As a legacy institution now, the question or the situation that we're facing is no longer whether we had a mandate. It is whether our operating model would match the reform complexity of the Nigeria we serve today. So there must be a change. So we have to learn to begin to diagnose, not prescribe. This is what we are doing here. Just come and swallow it. We have to begin to look at institutional audits of our departments. We have to begin to examine our program architecture, our partnerships with organizations like yours, and our reach into subnational governments, which I'm pursuing with vigor, to see what are their needs. People will only recognize a supply-driven training model. We're looking at a system that the reform agenda that we have underway will not end up in the cupboards. And 3 basic initiatives that I hope we can follow through to be able to serve the Nigeria of today and also be future ready. And the first major one that I'm super excited about, and which your foundation's sponsorship of my fellowship and my exposure at Blavatnik has actually helped me screw both sides, is the dream to transform ASCON to Nigeria's National School of Government, and currently accepted by the Office of the Head of Service and already in advanced legislative stage. This, I believe, would also help the college with an expanded mandate that moves us just from training, but reform delivery, policy advisory, and systems level capacity. And it will also help us help you that are investing in this for ASCON, by extension myself, that we will no longer be teaching just public administration. It will now be seen as an institution that will help government deliver, because we believe that once we go through there, for instance, if you take the public leadership program, imagine you working with ASCON and having the intervention of Blavatnik, because the people were training them for the government of Nigeria, for the subnationals, so they can relate. I'm hoping, if I'm not sounding too ambitious,
yes. No, that is the goal.
I'm very passionate about this, because if you really understand what capacity is doing in the system, you will feel like doing improvements in capacity building almost 24/7 in numbers, and I mean, yes, at scale. Yes, thank you for that word, because people don't know what to do. Ofovwe, I have people that don't know what their responsibilities require of them. They're just in the system, and honestly, bad enough, their supervisors don't know either. I called the people in my management consultancy department. Sorry, because this is very realistic, and that's why I'm using these examples. And I said, what does your department do? They said, actually, they have been helping some institutions conduct examinations. And I said, is that your idea of a consultancy? Can I give you your KPI? How many organizations have the department supported in organizational shift? How many development partners or foundations have we worked with to support a change in any subnational? The KPIs I counted out that you shouldn't have less than 8 consultancy services in a year, because you should be the highest revenue earner after training. How many organizations have, through you, served any particular state? None, darling. From 22 years ago, ASCON is known for producing the Journal of Management and Public Administration. They dropped the ball 22 years ago for capacity failure. I'm just resuscitating it this week, trying to put together an editorial board, trying to see how can we find funding to bring it back and be seen as a think tank on policy matters. 22 years hiatus.
It's like the organization doesn't understand what it's supposed to be doing.
Exactly. So it's a capacity problem. It's a capacity problem. So I'll just look for what I would describe as a systems-based. There must be systems, protocols, execution protocols. Look like if I can do something system-based simulation through the S model of RISE. That is moving away from classroom delivery that stops at the content transfer and certificate issuance. And it is placed, let's begin to look at how can we build live reform labs where participants can work on actual reform problems that are drawn from their own MDAs. We should be busy year-round. Service delivery bottlenecks, procurements, digitization rollouts, so that they don't just learn about the reform. They can rehearse it in simulation and go back and lead it. Once we are not able to achieve that, we're doing nothing. On our subnational architecture, that's why we're coming up with a strategy that is called the State ASCON Compact. Let me say that the subnational architecture, they are the levels where our reform story will ultimately be lost or won, because that's where the frontline service delivery happens.
That would be amazing. Yes. So, I mean, very, very ambitious agenda. But, change only happens when there's ambition and when there's vision and where there's a leader who understands what needs to be done and actually starts the process. So I really wish you the best of luck with all of this. And the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation is here to support you, as you know. Capacity in public servants is part of our key mandate. You mentioned the Public Leaders Program that we run. I would love for us to be able to deliver that at scale, provide similar experiences for all Nigeria's public servants. And it is only when there are organizations like ASCON that are properly equipped to deliver programs like this that we'll be able to achieve it. So, it is also in our best interest for you to succeed. And we will do everything that we can.
There could be some sort of programs that we could do with you also that gives you a wider reach in Nigeria's public service sector, especially at the subnational. ASCON has over 300 residential rooms, and the federal government has just given us 500 kilowatts of solar power. And we're thinking that more would come. Yes. And they've also put additional in the 2026 budget. So I can imagine that once we scale to the National School of Government, it gives us an expanded mandate to work in collaboration with you. But most importantly, I'm very happy that you're committing to support what we're trying to develop with the RISE model. And I'm sure that it will change the narrative and change the landscape, and make sure that your investment in the public service sector for capacity building is felt better. And that's why I'm also going to showcase this at the Africa Forum that's coming up next month, and their keynote speaker on what should change in training, how we can do it better. And we'd have examples like the fantastic job that Aig-Imoukhuede is doing. So
amazing. Thank you
for all of this.
Thank you. Yes, very much. Thank you so much. So what today's conversation makes clear is that execution is not the final step in reform. It's an outcome. It's an outcome of how well systems prepare people, how well institutions support them, and how intentionally learning is designed and applied. And Mrs. Adepoju said she dropped many gems during this conversation, but something that she said that I will take from this conversation is that training must be embedded in live application environments. Because really, when people are asked to deliver reform without the right mix of skills, experience, and institutional support, and they are not actually trained to work within the systems that they are operating in, that will result in inconsistency, and inconsistency over time becomes underperformance. So perhaps the question is not whether public servants can deliver reform, it's whether the system has made them ready to. And Mrs. Adepoju has shared her RISE concept and shared her great ambitions to transform the way that the Nigerian public servant is trained. And we at the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation look forward to seeing her achieve her ambitions to transform ASCON, and we look forward to the impact that this will have on the public servants themselves and reform implementation in Nigeria as a whole. So thank you so much once again for joining me, Funke. It's been such a pleasure to have you, and we will actually invite you back. We will invite you back in a year's time to see what the results of the RISE program.
Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity and for the platform. Thank you so much. I do not take it lightly. I appreciate the foundation. I appreciate your personal involvement and interest in making sure that we achieve from this engagement. Thank you very much, and my very great regards to the chairman of the foundation too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adepoju. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to the Aig-Imoukhuede Foundation podcast. At the foundation, we remain committed to supporting public sector leaders with the skills, tools, and networks they need to deliver meaningful and lasting reform. See you next time. Thank you.